Hello. I'm recording this video now because some of you actually wrote more than necessary. You made it almost a little bit more complicated when you were doing your essay outline. So I thought I'd do an example for you. So I just chose a topic that I thought would be easy to write about, which is the question might have been something like, what's your stance on the extent to which we buy new things in Western countries? So, capitalist consumption, etc. So then my title might be Frenzied Consumption. Do you really need those new shoes? All right, so you only had to write one sentence right here, guys. I made this part bold, but you could have deleted this part. You didn't even need this part anymore. But I just left these in so it'd be easier to explain. One sentence. The very device you are reading this essay on may have been manufactured by workers without basic human rights. Okay, that's a little dramatic, but it captures your reader's attention. My thesis statement: capitalist consumption at the level we see in the West does more harm than good. That's my whole point. It makes me sound like a flaming commie. Whatever, I accept. And then the outline of my key points would be, at a global level, this extreme buying and selling is unsustainable, unethical, and unnecessary. The reason I have these in different colors is to just make it super clear that this is my first key point, this is key point 2, this is key point 3. And I'll do something with those colors later just to show you. You don't have to have these in different colors. All right, so what was key point 1? It was the unsustainability. So maybe my key point would be, the way we consume in the West is the very definition of unsustainable. All right, so some random supporting ideas. If every country in the world consumed at the level of wealthy countries like Sweden, the UK, and the US, we would need a few planets the size of Earth. What's to be done when we run out of resources or space to expand upon? Do we have a moral obligation to leave something for future generations? So, when actually writing this into an essay, I would add some more details for each of these, but for an outline, this is fine. One little sentence. And then a concluding sentence would be, this leads us to more ethical considerations, because we were just talking about moral obligation. What's my next point? Ethics. So that's why it's a transition. Phrases like, this leads us to, or transitioning to my next point, or whatever. All right, so my next point would be the ethics of it, or how it's unethical. The competitive market can also be unethical at its core. Here are some supporting ideas. The natural result of fostering competitive markets in capitalism is that companies get most business when their products are least expensive. So businesses that outsource production to other countries can sell cheaper goods. Products manufactured in poorer countries can be made more cheaply because labor laws are worse than in Sweden, Japan, Germany, etc. The goods we buy with our reasonable salaries may have involved child labor or awful wages or even slavery. Okay, this is a little dramatic and I would need to flesh it out, and it'd be better if I had some research to back me up. But still, it's just an outline, no stress. This is one sentence. One sentence, one sentence. All right. You could end your paragraph in a question. How sure are you that the new shirt you bought was not made by a child? Okay, once again, dramatic, but it keeps your reader interested, potentially. All right, my next point. This one I did a little differently just to show you that you can do outlines in an even more skeletal way. This is not fleshed out at all. Look at that. I just have 2 words. Here, I have a few words. Here, I didn't bother with anything because I was like, well, I know when I write the essay, these 2 points will be super long. So if you are taking an essay test, for example, the ACT in the US, the test that everyone has to take when they're about 17, 18 in order to get into university, or most people have to take it. you have an essay test. And if you just jot down a quick outline, just like all of this, at the side of your paper, like in 5 minutes before you start writing the paper, you'll be much more organized in your thoughts and much less nervous. Okay, so anyway, support paragraph 3. This cycle of constantly buying is unnecessary, in that significant levels of happiness are still attainable while spending less money than we do now. Okay, so unnecessary. Remember, that was my third point. So now I'm talking about how it's unnecessary. Then in my actual paper, if I don't feel like writing it out in the outline, because the outline is just to help you, I would talk about my philosophy of what pleasure is. And that is actually, personally, when I am thinking of buying something that's twice as expensive as something else, I'm like, okay, is that going to give me twice as much pleasure? If not, then I'm not going to buy the more expensive thing. So I could explain that in this section of the paper. For example, when I was 18 and I was about to go to university, I knew that I would need a laptop. I was like, okay, should I get this MacBook or should I get a MacBook Pro? The MacBook at the time was $1,000 refurbished. The MacBook Pro was $2,000. I was like, okay, am I going to enjoy the MacBook Pro twice as much as the MacBook? No. So I didn't buy it. The MacBook served me quite well. So I could even put in a personal anecdote while explaining my philosophy of pleasure and how it's unnecessary to get things that are super expensive or to get twice as many things. I have the same pleasure principle with wine. I really love a glass of wine. Do 2 glasses of wine give me the same amount of pleasure? Does it give me double the pleasure, rather, as 1? No, I'd say it gives me 1.5 times the amount of pleasure. So it still gives me more pleasure than 1 glass of wine, but it doesn't. 2 glasses does not give me 2 times. So I don't necessarily like drinking a whole lot because the pleasure level decreases. Anyway, this second point here, I know that this would also take a long time in my paper. Sorry if you're bored by this. I just feel like this requires some explanation. When you buy things new from a company, you are voting with your money. And I would explain this here. You could be spending money on child labor. If you buy something secondhand, instead of that money going to companies that hire children, that money is going to the secondhand store. So maybe, for example, this shirt, I think a friend gave me this to me, but still, pretend this was secondhand. Yeah, maybe it was made by a child, but at least my money didn't go to that corrupt company. It went to the secondhand shop. So I would explain that at this part. Because these 2 stories or these 2 points took so long, I don't need more information here. All right, conclusion. What gives you the most pleasure, and is it indeed the most expensive option? All right, so for my conclusion, I would have to flesh this out in the actual essay, but here's what I have so far. Most people on this planet care about their environments, about others, and about themselves. It is thus not a far jump to say that sustainable business practice would protect those environments, ethical business practice would protect others, and personal restraint would protect ourselves from needless consumption and debt. Let's vote with our money. All right, and then in this, I didn't have any references. It'd be a really good idea, though, to get some outside sources. Then you're far more credible. Okay, so if I copied and pasted this whole thing in essay form, and this is what it looked like. This is what it looks like. So this is MLA format, and check it out. It actually ended up being kind of a lot. When you double space it, that's more than 1 page. To be a good essay, I would have to flesh it out a little bit, especially the shorter paragraphs. and especially the thing about the pleasure philosophy and secondhand. But once you finish the outline, your thoughts are totally organized, and you could do a lot of copy and pasting and then just edit later. So in your future, you will be writing a lot of essays, and I don't want you to be stressed about them. The outline is a way to not be stressed, because you just quickly organize your thoughts, copy and paste it into essay format, edit, delete stuff, add stuff, and hopefully when you're more used to it, you can get her done within an hour or something, depending on how long the subject takes you. All right, hopefully things are clearer than mud. So this lesson, you're going to edit your essay outline if you did it wrong. If you did it right, then you can just move on to chapter 4. Have a good one.